What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the My Gardener channel. In today's episode, we're going to be breaking down and tackling one of the most common and widely spread misconceptions in the gardening community, and that is the topic of growing zones. This is something that every single person should understand, because as soon as we start understanding what a growing zone is and how it can be applied to the garden, we can, number one, better our garden. We can also stop the spreading of misinformation. In a recent survey done by the Master Gardeners Association, they found that over 90% of gardeners were misusing and misapplying the term of growing zones to their garden. That's 90%. That is absolutely incredible how many people are misusing and misapplying the term of growing zones to their garden. So something this widespread needs to be talked about. So that's what we're going to do today, is we're going to talk about growing zones so you can not only know what they really are, know really how to apply them to your garden, and hopefully start to bridge that gap between the misinformed and the uninformed. Because the problem is that the misinformed, they're spreading the information to the uninformed, and then that has a multiplication effect, that the people that are trying to spread the right information is just not getting it out. It's just not getting out fast enough, because the misinformation is spreading faster than the information. And so hopefully we're just gonna tackle it today and get you guys to start spreading the right information, because the effects of this are so widespread. So first I want to talk about what a growing zone actually is. So the purpose of a growing zone is designated by the United States Department of Agriculture based on a 10-year moving average of the average coldest temperature experienced in winter. This means that it only applies to perennials. The term growing zones only applies to the cold hardiness of a perennial. So if you're growing something like a strawberry, it's cold hardy to zones 4 to 9. This is the range that a strawberry can survive. If you're in zone 3, the average coldest temperature is too cold for a strawberry to survive. Same thing with apples, pears, any of your fruit trees. You'll see a cold hardiness. Peaches are cold hardy from zone 6 down to about zone 10. So that is a zone that peaches can survive in. If you're outside of that zone, you might be able to get it to survive, but chances are it probably won't. And that's why the USDA designates growing zones. Growing zones do not apply to annuals. Annuals utilize only one thing, and that's days to maturity. Days to maturity are designated for annuals rather than perennials, because days to maturity on a perennial can be several years. Days to maturity on an annual is based on a season. It's based on one singular season. So basil might be 60 days to maturity, or things like squash, beans might be 40 to 60 days to maturity. Tomatoes might be 90 days to maturity. You have these maturity dates to see if you have enough days in your growing season to grow that crop. But 90% of gardeners apply growing zones to everything in their garden, whether it's basil, beans, tomatoes, peppers, and it's the most common question we get is, Luke, I'm in zone 7. What tomato grows best for me in zone 7? They will all grow for you in zone 7. If you have something like an onion, right? Onions, they are 110 days to maturity. If you're growing, whether in the south or the north, it's still 110 days to maturity. So if you're growing in zone 9, it's the same days to maturity as it is in zone 4 or 5. You just have to make sure that if you're in that zone that you have enough days to grow it. But it's not growing through the winter. That's the thing. You're not growing your beans through the winter, and therefore zone hardiness has nothing to do with your beans or your tomatoes or your corn or your basil or your beets or your arugula or your kale or your sunflowers, your okra or your cucumbers or your potatoes. Anything. It's only perennials. It's so widely misused. And so this information causes a rippling effect through seed suppliers and farm supply stores, where the consumer walks in and says, I'm looking for crops that grow well in zone 5. Zone 5 doesn't mean anything. Zone 5 is the coldest temperature in zone 5, which might be 0 to negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit. That's zone 5. It doesn't tell you how long the season is. It loosely translates, yes, it loosely translates to how long the season can be. But prime example is if you're up in the mountains in zone 4, yes, it might be colder because it's higher elevation, but your growing season might be just as long as someone in zone 6. That's just based on the growing zone, not how cold that it gets. And so it's really, really important that you understand that because, again, these seed supply stores, they're starting to apply growing zones. I've seen it on so many places where you'll say, I'm in zone 6, and it'll give you all these plants. It'll give you basil, it'll give you beans, it'll give you squash and zucchini. They don't overwinter. Growing zones does not apply to them. And therefore, there's a moral dilemma here because we do have a seed supply store. We have migardener.com. We have over 500 different varieties of heirloom seeds. I have a lot of people that say, what growing zone, what should I be growing in my growing zone? I said, grow anything you want. Grow anything you want. But if it's a perennial, look at which zone you're in and see if it's going to fit in that zone. And so it's really, really important we know how to understand what a growing zone is, how to apply it to our garden, and what doesn't apply to it. And finally, the question always arises about crops like rosemary. So we can grow them here in Michigan, but if we get winter-like conditions, they die. However, if you grow them down in, say, Florida or California, where you don't get any frost at all, they survive as a perennial. Where do those kind of fall in? And they don't fall in any different than any other crops. If they're a perennial somewhere in the world, they have a growing zone associated with them. You can still grow them as an annual, but either you have to take them indoors or you have to accept their fate when winter comes and know that they're going to die. When we grow our rosemary outside, we plant them out in early spring. We harvest them all through the growing season. But when winter comes and they die, we accept their fate and know that they're going to die. They will not come back in the spring because the growing zone for them is zones 9 through 13. Those are frost-free zones where the plant is not going to experience any freezing temperatures because if it does, the plant is going to die. And so you just have to understand this, that yes, there are some perennials that can grow annually for you. These are crops like mint, basil, oregano, sage, thyme, rosemary. A lot of your herbs are like that, where they grow very quickly and you can harvest from them. But if you can continually prune them, even a crop like basil, we typically see it as an annual. It typically has one season. But if you can continue to prune those flower buds off, it will grow as a tree. It will actually grow huge. In fact, you can see basil trees where the plant is 2-3 feet tall. It's just an absolute bush. And as long as you keep pruning those flowers back, the plant will continue to grow and continue to thrive. And it doesn't really have a lifespan. It does not have a designated time when it can die. But we just happen to grow it here in a season where the weather happens to kill it off. So those are things to keep in mind, and those are kind of things to consider. Do your research, know what you're growing, know how it grows and how fast it grows, and then that can better dictate if you can grow it. But all in all, crops like rosemary still do have a growing zone. They are still a perennial in a certain zone. It's just not the zone that you're growing it in. So keep that in mind as well. And I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope this broke down the misinformation very clearly. If you have any questions, which, I'm sure you guys still do, it's such a widely, talked about misconception that I'm sure you guys have some questions. Post them down in the comments box below. I'd be happy to answer them. And remember, spread this video around with your friends. It's the only way that we're gonna get this video out to the masses. It's the only way that we're gonna help break down those misinformations. And also, encourage other YouTubers. I'm gonna call out a few people that I would love, not only for you to check out, but also that I would encourage them to make a video about this topic because it is very common, it's very prolific, and it's the only way that we can tackle this as a community. So I'm gonna call out Roots and Refuge Farm. Roots and Refuge Farm, Jess, is an absolutely amazing person that I recommend checking out. She has a whole garden that is just absolutely beautiful and the cattle panel trellises were inspired by her channel. So I call out Jess from Roots and Refuge Farm to do a video talking about this topic. And I also want to call out Freedom Homestead, Tangi and Jack from Freedom Homestead, another great channel worth checking out. SSL Family Dad, Todd, is a wonderful guy, super family friendly. We got a train going by. Excuse you too. Todd is an amazing guy, and he also has a wonderful garden and greenhouse and is more of a farmer. But Todd, I call you out to make a video about this topic because we need to tackle this misinformation and really just hone in the information to help better the community. I also want to call out a bigger channel, John from Growing Your Greens. John has been an influential person in my life for as long as I can remember. He's one of the biggest reasons why I started my YouTube channel. And John, I would love to see you talk about this topic on your channel. I think it's something that so many of us that have a platform and have a voice just don't talk enough about and don't really get that information out there to people. And finally, the last person I want to shout out is one of my really close friends and someone that I would love to do a collaboration with, and someone that I think you should check out, and that's Laura from Garden Answer. Now, she does mostly flowers. She has integrated some vegetables into her channel. Another wonderful person, great spirited person, and just an incredible channel all around. So Laura, I'm calling you out as well to do a video about this. And I think as a community, if we can get behind this and use our voices to inform, use our platforms to inform, we're going to start to see way less misinformation. We're going to start to see way more people spreading the right type of information. And hopefully people are going to start to use this to actually better their gardens and also just help them to become better gardeners all around. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new, and we'll catch you all on tomorrow's episode. Grow big or go home. Bye.